Hey YouTube, David Star 500 here. How are you? I just got home from watching the movie War Room, alright? Christian film. I've not read any reviews since I got home. Not read any reviews, I believe, before the movie came out. I haven't checked anything except that I think on IMDb, I forget which one it is. It didn't have a very high-looking score on that. However, that was before I saw the movie a long time ago. So, tonight I've seen the movie, and I'm going to be giving my review on it. Alright, so the story goes something like this. It follows Elizabeth Jordan. She is married to a man named Tony. Tony, while it appears that they were once in love and she is trying to love him now, it appears that he no longer cares about her or for her. Tony has become abusive, greedy, and uncaring. And Elizabeth is now at the lowest of lows, believing that her husband is having an affair with another woman. It's about this time, however, that during Elizabeth's job as a real estate broker, she meets a woman named Miss Kathy. Miss Kathy is a fiery woman of prayer. She takes Elizabeth under her wing kind of as a disciple, if you will, and she begins to teach her about praying to God and using the power of God to fight her battles for her. Alright, so I'd like to say some positive things about this movie. The first one I would like to mention is that this movie was clearly made for believers. A lot of the Christian movies these days, they're merely made in an attempt to convert people. That's all they're about. They say, haul them in, we'll get them saved. You almost never get them saved, and in fact, you often get them to kind of distance themselves from the faith even more because they're mad at you for trying to get them to get saved through a piece of what is in their mind propaganda. So I really like that this movie decided we're not going to talk to the non-believers. We're making this as a story, an inspirational story for Christians. Alright, these characters who are going through all these problems, they are Christians. They're nominal Christians. Particularly the husband, who is a churchgoer, a mere churchgoer with no faith himself. But it's encouraging people who are already Christians, who already have a level of belief, to step it up and to trust in God, and to trust in the things they claim to believe. So I thought that was very good. And the second is sort of goes on the same terms, second positive. It is very inspirational for Christians. It teaches biblical truths that there is power in prayer. This is a biblical belief. If you are a Christian, you believe there is power in prayer. It's sort of a required belief. God answers prayer. He answers it in His own way, but God loves us, He listens to us, and He has the power to do anything. That is the belief. That is a core belief of the Christian faith. It's something of a belief of all decent religions, you know, so it teaches a good biblical truth. Now, the next one, I've got to say this movie it has so much comic relief. Maybe too much, but I don't care. It's a weakness of mine. I love to laugh. This very serious movie can get witty as heck, particularly due to the nature of the prayer warrior Miss Kathy, who jumps from being serious and fiery to being funny, to cracking jokes. And she knows she's funny. You can tell her. And sometimes she'll talk to herself. She's like, I know I'm being funny. You know, you just feel that, you know, you don't feel like she's ignorant. She knows. She knows. So I really liked that part of it. It does, however, here and there have a level of realism. A lot of these Christian movies, they get very unrealistic. They get to the point where, oh, that's impossible. It's improbable, at least, you know. That much good can happen. This family, even after they submit to God, even after their family issues are fixed, they still have issues outside of their family. It's shown they still have troubles, and in the end, in this world, they end up off on the lower end than what they were before. But on the other hand, it does show that between the husband and the wife and the family, they're so much happier. And that does happen. People do grow closer. People do find love in the Christian faith and in Jesus. But they often don't get all these material possessions, these great wins, these facing the giant style victories, The real world isn't like that, and Christianity has never been like that. You're not going to live this prosperous life just because you become a Christian. Everything's not going to work out perfectly. And the family faced troubles, and you know what? It also faced some consequences for the man's action as an unbeliever. Even though he was sorry for what he did, he faced some consequences. On the other hand, it showed that being sorry in itself may reduce punishment in some cases. Not all, but in some. You'll have to see the movie yourself to understand what I mean. And by the way, at the end of this, I am still going to recommend you see the movie. The last good thing about the movie I wanted to mention was that while not all the actors were great, the main character was very, very good. I believed the main character. She was very, very human. I recognized her. I've seen people like her. She was very believable, very relatable. I loved this woman, Elizabeth. She was great. I mean, she reminded me of ladies I knew. She reminded me a bit. I mean, in some scenes, it was like, my mother, perhaps. Some things she said to her kid, some of the conversation there. It was so real. I loved the mother. And yes, so those are some positive things about this movie. Alright, so we talked about some positives, now a few negatives, and surprisingly fewer negatives than positives. I'd like to say this is a pretty good film. The one I would give is probably the acting on the father's part. I thought it needed work. It was a little too over the top in the beginning. There are very few people quite that bad and that abusive who just make such sudden shifts in character. Most people still have some good in them, even at their worst, and most people still have problems at their best, and they don't just make such sudden shifts on personality. Usually, now there are extreme cases, of course, and I believe Christ has changed people in extraordinary ways. Nevertheless, I felt that the father character did not seem to be able to act in any sort of middle ground way very much, except maybe for one very powerful scene. There was one powerful scene in near the end where I felt, okay, the actor has gotten it. But then he went right on, and I'm like, maybe he hasn't. But overall, I'd say that the father could have used some work. He didn't seem to be a great actor. He seemed very over the top, especially at the beginning, to the point where I didn't believe it. He seemed so abusive, so horrible. I don't know, I couldn't believe it myself. Maybe there are people like that. It just seems a little too one-sided for a human being. The next part is there were certain plot points in the movie, certain subplots, which were in themselves very funny, great, beautiful subplots, but I'm thinking you needed to let one or two of them, at least one of them, go. Because after the main plot was accomplished, the main scenario, the main synopsis was accomplished, it just dragged on and on and on and on and on and on. And it just wouldn't stop. I mean, it felt like I was watching Return of the King, Christian movie version. It was like one scene after another, and I'm like, okay, I'm enjoying every individual scene, but I feel like the movie needs to wrap this stuff up. And there was one scene in particular, it had to do with skipping rope. On its own, it was a funny subplot, and it was even a really epic subplot on its own. But as part of this movie, I felt that it could have been either eliminated altogether or cut short, at least, so that the running time of this movie could have been shortened, and so that the impact of other scenes would have been made better. So I thought the running time was a little too long, and I thought it had one too many subplots. Also, I'd like to mention the tone. I mentioned earlier that there was so much humor in this movie, and it is good humor. It's not just, like the beginning of, I don't know, God's Not Dead, the couple of jokes which were really good, but then it's dark the rest of the way through. There are jokes all through this movie. Good belly bursters, some of them, alright? And at the same time, we would be in this really intense scene, and then this joke would come up, and everyone would laugh, but then we'd think, what are we supposed to be feeling? You're messing with my emotions here. The tone could never really be reached at some points. There were points where it was like, oh, this is so sad. This is... oh, crap. Oh, this is so sad, so sad. You know what I mean? It was inconsistent. The tone of the film was inconsistent, bringing you all over the place. So it needed work on that. So those are some negatives about the film. Christian media is never treated kindly by the secular world, and in a lot of cases it doesn't deserve to be. In a lot of cases it has flaws that truly are there. On the other hand, at points you're thinking, some of the stuff in these movies is good, it's just that they don't like it because they disagree with it. And there is some of that too. There really is some of that. But we also must recognize that Christian movies do have their flaws in them, and some are better than others. I would rate this movie very high, by the way, compared to some Christian movies. And compared to others, I would not rank it as high. A lot of people, however, think Christians ought to make movies that appeal to all people. Well, Christian directors should, of course. They should make standard movies, but Christian movies are meant to speak to Christians primarily. There are some that are designed to convert others, but I've seen this as being proven as a largely useless affair. Most people are not going to be changed in their mind and in their heart because of seeing a movie. Some will, but most won't. I think the most important thing Christians movies do is teach Christians, and this they do very well, this movie in particular. It teaches a very valuable message to Christians. It's an inspirational speech with a good deal of humor in it, almost. It's a reminder of what we believe. It's a reminder of the core principles of prayer. It's also a battle cry to Christians to unite and pray and do the only thing we truly can do that has great power, and that is ask the Creator of the universe for guidance and help, which is something I think we really need to focus on right now, we who believe in Jesus Christ. So I felt that in that way this movie was great. But I would say that even as a piece of artistic work, it's not bad. It'll probably never win a standard secular artist award, but it's not bad. I mean, as a movie itself, it's very tolerable. I mean, and the humor and, the fact that you actually liked some of the main characters. I almost never like characters in Christian movies. I really liked both Miss Clara and the mother Elizabeth in this movie. I thought they were great. I thought they were but the mother was very real, and the lady was, even though I don't believe she could exist, I think she was very funny. But overall, if I was to give this movie stars, in fact I would give it 3.5 out of 5 stars altogether. Maybe just 3 stars as a movie, but 5 stars as a Christian message. This as a sermon, this is perfect. This is one of the best movie sermons I've ever had. But just as a piece of art, I'd give it about 3. So altogether, I'd give it about 3.5 to combine the two. So tell me what you think of it. I enjoyed it. I would recommend you watch War Room, the latest Christian movie. If you liked God's Not Dead, you'll love it. If you disliked God's Not Dead like I did, you'll probably think of it as pretty good, actually. You'll say, oh, this is really different. If you liked Left Behind, you'll like Jar Jar Binks. But never mind that. That's a judgment on my part. It's unjust. I hated that movie. But anyway, on this movie, whatever your background is, if you're a Christian, you'll be inspired and you'll love it. And if you're the non-Christian who's being dragged there, this will be a very tolerable movie for you because it's not a bad piece of art. So I would recommend you go see War Room. It's inspiring, it's excellent, and it's very well done.